Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly think they can do what they want, when they want, because the world revolves around them. And in today's episode, we've got horrible Karen parents, guys. That's right, we're talking parents abandoning their kids in malls, ruining graduation parties, throwing tantrums in planes. Holy moly, it's a wild one. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this just happened over the weekend, but I'm still pissed thinking about it. So this week has been rough, and my toddler's going through some rebellious phase, and my husband was away for work all week, and my mother-in-law, who babysits for us, is on vacation. I'm a work-from-home mom, and there were some emergencies at work. Let's just say I'm exhausted. So on Sunday, I took my daughter outside for a long walk with the stroller, and then decided to grab lunch at a local food court. As I'm getting our things, she's being really fussy, but I managed to calm her down. This is when a dad with two small kids, who look to be 2 and 4, sits right next to us, and he places his kids on high chairs. Not children's high chairs, but regular adult ones, without straps or even a back. Now I thought this was kind of odd, as there were empty tables all around us, and the guy comes right to me. He strikes up a short conversation with me as our daughters are similar ages. And then, when I'm trying to feed my kid, I hear him say to his children, "So, guys, you look after each other and the bags. This nice lady is here if you need anything. I'll go grab a coffee." And before I say anything, the guy's gone. I stand up to try to catch his attention, to which he responds, "I'll be right back. I really need a coffee. Thanks." Now hearing that, I was surprised, like very surprised, but alright. I can understand a fellow parent being tired and needing a coffee. I bet he'll be back in a minute, right? Wrong. 15 minutes later, and my meal is completely untouched, as I try to keep my toddler sitting while persuading two kids who I've never seen before to not jump down from their bar stools and run around the mall. The older one was nice and he wanted to chat, but also tried to jump down and go look for his father multiple times. The younger one's just a toddler herself and she's afraid of the height. So every single time I turn to face my daughter, she goes to jump down on the hard floor. And at this point, I'm losing it. This is not what I needed today. Another 15 minutes later, so half an hour in total, the dad comes back with a Starbucks cup. The Starbucks isn't even in the food court, it's on the other end of the mall. He then goes, "Sorry guys, there was a really long line." And the thing is, he doesn't even look at me. He just says to his kids, "Okay, let's go, we gotta get home to your mother." Hearing him say that, I feel myself wanting to say something nasty, but I'm a very non-confrontational person, so I just grab my completely cold food, wave bye-bye to the kids, and leave with my daughter. I just feel like a gullible idiot for caring for that idiot's kids, but I couldn't live with myself if something happened to them. None of that was their fault. Thank you so much for reading my rant. My daughter just fell asleep, and I needed to get this out. Guys, it always boggles my mind when people leave their children with complete strangers. Like, how would that dad live with himself if something were to happen to his kids who are 2 and 4 years old in the half hour he was gone? Like, there are so many things that could have gone wrong. Like, what if OP suddenly had to go? What if OP was a kidnapper? Oh my goodness. And the thing is, this was such a no-win situation for OP, and shame on that dad for dumping his kids on a complete stranger like that. Like, why can't you take your kids to Starbucks? Guys, let me know what you would do. How many of you would have stayed? Honestly, I think I would have gone off to find security or something, because who knows how long it would have been before dad came back. And this person shares a similar story, and they say, "This happened a little while ago, so the details are fuzzy. My family has been a fan of the Jurassic Park movies since the first one came out. And when the latest one was in the movie theater, we all stood in line for hours to get the last session after my dad left work. Mind you, this was around 10 p.m. on a Thursday. The movie was awesome. I really felt like a happy nerd. But the shock came as we were leaving the theater. A boy around 8 years old approaches my dad, asking for a ride back home. Again, I have to explicitly put that the movie started at 11:30 p.m. and it ended at almost 2 a.m. The kid gives my dad an address in a paper. My dad was half worried that it was some kind of scam, and he was half terrified that somebody would actually abandon a child like that. But the little boy explained that his dad gave him money for the ticket and dropped him off at the mall with no extra money for a cab, only the address and the instruction to look for a ride from a family, not just an adult, for safety reasons. My dad didn't want to risk his daughters with any possible danger, and he deeply considered calling the cops. But it was 2 o'clock in the morning and there was almost no life in sight. And the cops usually take hours to show up where we live, and he had to work the next day. So he decided to give the kid a ride home. During the ride, he told us how he really liked movies and rarely got a chance to see any. So when he did, it was usually by himself. My dad had a few choice words for his parents when we got to his house, but they were already asleep. The kid just walked inside, locked the door, and waved us goodbye from the window as we left speechless. And I know this could be a financial situation, but this is no excuse to leave your child alone like that. It was way too late and way too crowded for a little boy to walk around asking strangers to give him a ride. I, to this day, can't understand how his parents would sleep when they can't be sure if their child is coming back or not. Please be mindful of your children and even other children you see around, because some people are just not. Again, mind-boggling how people do that, right? And it makes me so upset that people do that. And if that were me in OP's dad's shoes, I would have absolutely called the cops. Forget about work the next day. Because if there were things going on in that household, at least they could help the child if need be. And also, what if that was the wrong address or something and the kid was making up a story to run away or something? Like, the last thing you need in your life is to be charged with kidnapping, right? In my opinion, always get authorities involved, especially when it comes to minors that are that young. Shame on those parents. So this happened a few years ago, but I was listening to your stories and thinking about my mom, so I thought I would share it. This story's about me, a female, 18 at the time. My parents have been divorced for a very long time. My senior year, I was taking dual courses in college, so I wasn't that excited about my high school graduation. My dad and stepmom decided that they were going to throw me a small graduation party to celebrate me. It was a very small party, only my grandma and siblings were invited. It was more like a barbecue gathering where everyone can come and have fun, but I had no idea it was happening because they wanted to surprise me. The key word here is surprise. My father reaches out to my mother and told her that they were going to have a small thing for me and that she was welcome to come. Well, my entitled, narcissistic mother became outraged that I did not call and personally invite her. She calls me up one night and she screamed at me for a solid hour. And here's a part of the conversation. I basically pick up and say, "Hey mom, what's up?" And she starts screaming at me saying, "Why did you not invite me to your party?" I say, "What party?" She then says, "Your graduation party. Don't act like you don't know." I tell her, "Mom, I'm not having a graduation party. I don't know what you're talking about." She keeps going on and says, "Don't you lie to me. I know you're having a party and I want to know why you hate me so much. This is your graduation. I should be there." I tell her, "Mom, seriously, all I know about is the ceremony, and as far as I know, you've already been given an invitation." She then says, "Fine, I won't come, but I just want you to know that I care about you, and it hurts to know you don't care about me." Now, I was upset, so I went to talk to my dad about it. He then said he was sorry, but my stepmom and him were planning a surprise party. He invited her to be nice, but he didn't think she would react like that. So it wasn't a surprise anymore, but I was happy for the thought. A few days later was my graduation ceremony. After the ceremony, I met up with everyone up front for pictures in my cap and gown. My mom had purposefully dragged mascara down her cheek to make it look like she had been sobbing. We all took pictures, and she refused to smile in any of my pictures. She made sure that every single picture she was in, she frowned as hard as she could, and she scrunched up her face. She looked like a toddler having a tantrum. We actually had to escape from her to go get pictures taken where the whole family looked happy. She decided not to go to the party afterwards. She did, however, call me every 20 minutes to express how left out of my life she felt. It wasn't even a large party. It was fun though, but that's how my mom ruined my graduation. You know what? Reading this post, I can't see why OP's parents were divorced. Like, she sounds like such a wonderful person, doesn't she? And honestly, her not attending OP's graduation party was the greatest gift she could have given OP. Because you know for a fact that if she was there, it might have escalated to the point where cops need to be called. That said though, her frowning in every single picture at OP's grad sounds hilarious. I would love to see those pictures. When I was a little kid in the early 90s, my mom decided to leave me and my sister with a babysitter because she was working hard full-time on what was relatively a new career back then. Let's call this horrible babysitter Karen. I was reminded of this story earlier when someone mentioned spanking with a wooden spoon. You'll soon know why. Karen was absolutely awful as a person and a babysitter. She was a chubby woman with black hair, and at the time, she was babysitting around 10 or more kids, between the ages of 3 and 10, while also watching 2 of her own kids at the same time. The place she babysat us at was at an apartment in a building that was surrounded by an iron fence with a locked gate. It felt kind of like a jail sometimes. Karen had the mindset that if one kid brought something from home, everyone got to use it. And if it broke, she would just throw it in the dumpster, no matter what it was. That said, my sister and I had plastic big wheel trikes that we loved as little kids. Hers was rainbow colored and had a really cute rounded design that looked like something right out of an 80s cartoon. My big wheel was black and bright neon green with a lot of futuristic squared edges, like it was out of the Tron movie or something. My sister and I were allowed to bring both our big wheels to Karen's so we would have something of our own to play with and kill time on. We had the trikes there barely a week, and that's when an overweight kid that was there thought it was a good idea to push my sister off her big wheel and ride it without asking her. As soon as the kid plops down on it, the poor big wheel just broke in half, like a twig. My sister was devastated, and Karen just took the pieces and threw them in the trash. Then there was my big wheel. Another kid gets on mine while I was busy doing something else, and then he ripped the handlebars clean off of it because he wanted to treat it like a BMX or something. And despite it being very repairable, Karen just picks it up and she throws it in the dumpster with me crying next to her the entire time, telling her to stop. The woman had no sympathy for any of the kids whatsoever. When I cried to my mom about the big wheel in front of Karen, she told me I was getting too old for it anyways. With that said though, with how bad Karen treated us, the way she treated her own kids was even worse. I remember that she had a son about my age named Sean. Sean was a nice boy, tall for his age, and he wore glasses. And the thing is, Sean had cool stuff, and he didn't mind sharing it at all. He was rather mature and independent for a 6-year-old. I just remember being there one day when Sean stood up to his mom. One kid had twisted the head off his action figure, and he was upset about it as his mom just threw it in the dumpster. Of course, with Sean crying over it, Karen wanted to make an example of him. I remember her just gathering us up in the living room, pulling Sean's pants down, and then proceeded to spank him with a wooden spoon while making all of us watch. Us kids were mortified. I remember being scared of that wooden spoon for a really long time. But the one thing she did that still irks me to this day is she would literally make Sean kiss her feet, and she would make us all watch. My sister eventually told my mom what was going on, and she arranged to have our great-grandfather watch us instead. My poor mom actually continually apologized to us for years because she felt so guilty for the things that she let Karen do to us. I think word eventually got out on her actions though, as she hastily moved out of that apartment and she stopped babysitting kids. I saw her and Sean at the local church once in a while. Sean was a really cool guy to talk to, and if I remember right, Karen eventually got sick. I can't remember from what though, or if she passed away, but if she's still alive, I hope I never hear anything about her ever again. What a nasty witch of a person she was, and what she did wasn't discipline at all, guys. Like at that point, it was straight up abuse. Also, I'm pretty sure she was running an illegal daycare there because if I remember correctly, there's supposed to be a certain number of adults to kids when it comes to childcare. And 12 children to one psycho daycare Karen is again a big no-no. And listen guys, I don't want to sound like a big tough guy in this situation, but if my kid were to come home from daycare and they were like, we watched a daycare teacher spank a kid with a wooden spoon in front of us and then made that same kid kiss her feet, oh boy, I would be so angry. I think I would have that place shut down so fast. Either that, or I'd go marching there with a wooden spoon myself and I'd teach Karen a lesson because I can't stand any sort of abuse, especially when there's kids involved. So I live in Singapore and I was 14 when this happened. This was during chemistry when we had to learn about neutralization of acid and alkali. Simple stuff, really. The class was arranged in a way that I'm sitting directly in front of this one entitled kid, but I couldn't switch because we were arranged via index number and a bunch of other factors. Basically, I can't change my seat. On our desks, we had a bunch of bottles containing chemicals, mainly alkalis and acids. A weak acid, but it's still acid. Now, this one kid was the classic I don't give a crap about school boy, and the guy was constantly getting into trouble for talking in class, disrupting lessons, not handing in homework. You get the point. Everyone has had this one person in class before, right? That said, the class goes on as usual, until the teacher confronts the kid about why he's not doing the experiment. It's a simple experiment, just adding acid into alkali and seeing something happen, but the kid simply just ignores the teacher. The teacher, of course, gets frustrated and he's saying things like, "Do the experiment, help your partner, stop being lazy." The kid just simply replied, "No, I don't feel like it." The teacher continued to pester him to do the experiment for a good 2 minutes, and this is when the kid, who also had anger issues, got super triggered, and he smashes the table before swiping away the bottles of chemicals, which unluckily got me splattered in what I believe was diluted sulfuric acid, according to one of my friends. Now, I thought I was going to die because I could feel the acid dripping from my hair and going down my back. Basically, my whole back was covered in acid. The teacher, of course, pulls the kid by the arm and forced him outside the lab, while my lab partner brought me to the bathroom to wash away the acid that was probably eating into my flesh right now. It was scary. I got rinsed and my mom picks me up to take me to see a doctor. Thankfully, nothing serious, really. The day after the lab lesson, I was called to the discipline master's office with the kid, his mom, and my teacher. The discipline master said, according to reports from the teacher as well as some classmates, your child was angered over not wanting to do the assignment and splattered acid all over OP. The mom replies, "So? Does that seem to be a problem? Why not just ask her to not sit in front of my son then?" And hearing that, I'm thinking, excuse me, it's not like I can change my own seat. If I could, I definitely would because I wouldn't want to be around your son. The discipline master then says, nevertheless, your son reacted aggressively against a teacher. He's hurt her, and we've concluded 5 days in-house suspension. Now, I was hoping for a cane, but that works too, I guess. And hearing that, the woman's face was red, and her son still had this whatever look on his face. The woman, her kid, and I were told to leave, while my teacher remained to do some writings in the kid's book or something. As soon as we got out of the office, the woman slaps my arm, and she yells at me and says, "Why did you get my son suspended?" Now, I'm a shy, quiet girl, and I never get in situations like this, so I'm just baffled, thinking of what to say. I'm about to break into tears at that point when Discipline Master storms out of his office and loudly asked, "What's going on? You two need to leave right now." The woman still had the courage to scream at him saying, "It's her fault my son's in suspension." The discipline master was about to call security at that point when the woman screams at him and says, "This is the worst discipline master I've ever seen. You made my son receive a suspension when this girl is..." He then cuts her off and he quietly says, "Ma'am, you have one last chance to get off the school grounds before I expel your child." The woman then says with absolute confidence, "You can't do that." So long story shorter, 2 security guards at the school were called, and the guards just dragged them out of the school, all the while the woman was screaming unfair discipline. I was completely fine after that, and the acid burns left after a few weeks. The kid was transferred to a private school and he didn't get his 5-day suspension. I heard rumors that private schools give discipline cases based on income from the family, so he's probably gonna be hell for the students in that school because his parents are quite well off. Ain't that something, guys? Entitled rich Karen thinking her son's allowed to do what he wants. And clearly the kid's able to, because instead of seeing what he did was wrong and letting him face the suspension, mommy just transferred him to a different school, which is ridiculous. And the fact that she argued it was OP's fault for being in the way, geez Louise, some people literally never take accountability, do they? It's never their fault. So this takes place back in 2014 when I was flying back to the US from a vacation. This didn't involve me, but 2 families, and I and everyone on the plane in our economy class were witnesses. The first family consists of a father, mother, a young girl who's about 6 years old, and a baby. The second family is the entitled dad and his 10-year-old son. I was sitting behind the family with the baby, and an hour and a half into the flight, the baby starts bawling, which is nothing unusual because there's always one, right? I just shrug it off and I turn up the volume on my headphones. The kid cries for like an hour straight and he's still going strong. The other passengers at this point are getting a bit ticked, but so far, no one said anything. I should also add that the parents weren't idle during their kid's screaming. They routinely traded shifts of rocking and shushing, gentle singing, trying to feed and change him, anything parents would do for a crying baby. And here's where things heat up. At about the 2-hour mark of the baby bawling, out of nowhere, the entitled dad at full volume stands up and shouts, "Oh my effing god, shut that effing kid up." Of course, with the loud outburst, the flight attendant runs back due to the commotion. The flight attendant asked, "What's going on here?" And the dad says, "These people's kid here is what's going on. I hope you realize that there will be repercussions for this." The father looks at him and says, "Look, we're really sorry. We've tried everything we can. This isn't normal for our son. We think he's sick." The entitled dad then goes on and says, "Well, you people could have at least anticipated if your son was going to cry so much. If it was up to me, you and your child would be thrown off the plane." He then says to the flight attendant, "And you need to make this better for us. We want free drinks, bonus miles, and we need to be upgraded to first class right now." During the exchange, another passenger, who identified himself as a doctor, offered to take a look at the baby, remarking that he was just really sick and feeling uncomfortable. I managed to overhear that he had a high fever, and a raspy sound coming from his lungs meant that he had some sort of respiratory infection, and that he should be taken to a clinic when they land for a proper diagnosis and care. But back to the dialogue. The flight attendant tells the guy, "Sir, we're not going to resolve this now, and you getting angry is not helping anyone. So please sit back down and keep the volume down. I can bring you and your son some drinks and some complimentary headphones when we start coming around with the beverage cart again." The guy screams and says, "How dare you? It's bad enough that I have to deal with crying brats and this crappy airline, but you have the nerve to blow me off? I want your name." By this point, the 2 other flight attendants were there to make sure things didn't boil over. The flight attendant went off towards the cockpit, maybe to inform the flight crew of the situation. This is when the entitled dad says to the father, "You people should be banned from flying. Do you know how tired my son is because of your kid?" The mother chimes in and says, "Sir, please, our son's sick. We're doing everything we can to calm him." The father adds, "There's nothing we can do. We're exhausted, just like you. Now sit down and don't talk to my wife and kids like that." Hearing him say that, the entitled dad screams, "I will effing kill you." And that was a huge mistake. At that, the 2 male flight attendants moved up and they got right in the guy's face and quietly barked at him to sit down as they grappled with him. People were fumbling with their seatbelts and abruptly standing up and backing away to avoid getting hit. In that instant, the flight attendant and the crew managed by some miracle to get the dad to sit down, and they managed to calm the other passengers from breaking out into a panic and coax them back into their seats. Now, I don't know much of what the entitled dad said afterwards. I only caught a mutter here and there of I deserve this, I deserve that, etc. He was kept under close watch the rest of the flight. The baby ran out of steam an hour afterwards, and he passed out for the rest of the flight. After we landed and we started shuffling off the plane, we witnessed the entitled dad and his kid getting hauled away by security. Absolutely brilliant, sir. Like, not only is that man probably not getting any compensation, he's probably also put on the no-fly list now because of his raging tantrum. And seriously, reading this post, I can't help but to feel bad for the parents. Like, not only do they have to deal with the sick baby, but they also have a grown man screaming at them to shut the heck up. I'm gonna throw you out of the plane, blah blah blah. And here's something people don't realize. Parents don't want their babies to be screaming on flights. Like, that is something that can't be controlled. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our /malicious compliance episode, where bad bosses are getting absolutely destroyed. And this one Karen threatens the owner and she regrets it big time. It's such a wild episode. So go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.